It's so nice to talk to you guys about this, and I'm looking forward to sort of a lively discussion. What I had, the talk is called Inspiring Futures, the Integral Role of 21st Century Libraries as Hubs of Creativity. And I plan to talk about some of the emerging initiatives that the Georgia Tech Library has been focused on, and other academic libraries are focused on as well. But there are things like arts-related programming, such as our Artist in Residence program. We also have the SMART program, which seeks to sort of bring librarians, artists, and educators all together in collective course design and project design. And I'll finish up by talking a little bit about how libraries are leveraging emerging technologies to create virtual environments to showcase archival materials and special collections. That's kind of the next, I think, phase that libraries are delving into. And I have been working on a special research initiative related to that, which I will talk about at the end of the presentation, and hopefully be able to show you a little video of that as well. But I look forward to hear what you guys think about the role of libraries on campus and how you've interacted with libraries in your careers. So a little bit about myself. As multimedia and emerging technologies librarian, this is a role I've been in since about 2010. Although I've worked at Georgia Tech in other roles. I've been around for a while, working in different capacities. So it's been a lot longer than that. But in this particular role, I've been working since 2010. And a lot of my focus is in the integration of technology into the curriculum. So my role is very much to support faculty in designing course projects that are integrating multimedia technologies or emerging technologies, video, audio editing, graphic design, that sort of thing. There has oftentimes been quite a bit of overlap with artistic endeavors as a result. And so I find myself actually working sort of in kind of two buckets. There's the emerging technologies bucket and the technology-focused initiatives, and then there's also artistic endeavors and programs through the library. But it's a labor of love. I really enjoy it. About, I guess, 5 or so years ago, we received an IMLS grant to support integrating arts-based projects and library resources into the curriculum, and that was funded through the Institute for Museum and Library Services. And that was kind of one of the things that was the impetus for us getting a lot of our artistic programming started. So libraries have come a long way since 1876 with the formation of the American Library Association and the Dewey Decimal System, which I'm sure a lot of folks tend to associate libraries with. And we went on to get the first digital libraries in the 1990s, and ultimately we've been moving beyond books in 2000s. So it hasn't been, too long ago that things started to shift. But today's libraries really aren't just places to consume content, they're places to create. And you probably have seen it if you've been over at our library at all. We have, maker studios and podcast booths and video editing software. All this is representative of the way libraries are moving. And libraries, they're becoming creative hubs where just as much content is produced as it is enjoyed. So that's what you're going to see in a lot, especially academic libraries. That is the trend moving forward. So when I was playing around with text-to-image generators and AI, and even when I use terms specific to futuristic libraries, it predominantly spits out images with this Gothic and architecture-inspired buildings lined with books. But, the reality is the landscape of the current academic library is very different. Library resources are not only the traditional resources that we think of as like academic journals or e-resources or books, Libraries now include software packages, data analysis tools, multimedia hardware and software, which I've been working with, for the last decade. And even in the public library landscape, there are things like seed libraries or power tool checkout programs. But all this is really representative of the overarching goals libraries have to level the playing field and expose patrons and users to resources that they need to succeed, regardless of discipline or background. And included in the American Library Association's mission is to enhance learning and ensure access to information for all. And along with access to resources comes instruction. So you can't really just have the resources without supplemental information. So the programming that we're basically working on developing programming that is supplementing these new diverse collections. And it's really even more critical as our definition of resources and information expands. So that's really a reflection of how information is changing. So as I mentioned earlier, I thought that this talk could sort of discuss some of our newer initiatives that our library is developing that are representative of programs that enhance and supplement the growing library collections, and really emphasize a library's role as the interdisciplinary center of campus. So a few of the things that I'm going to talk about today are our Artist in Residence program, our Scholars Making Art program, or SMART for short. And then I'm also going to talk about a VIP class that our library leads that is focused on developing virtual exhibits and collections, which I am seeing as the next wave of what libraries and museums may delve into. I'll start by talking about Scholars Making Art, since this was sort of a brainchild of mine many years ago and kind of got us going down an interest in being more involved in the arts on campus and having librarians work with artists more closely. A little bit about the SMART program. The program kind of has its origins going back to about 2013 or 2014, and at the time it was known as the Communication Through Art program. And we've been working on recreating and rebooting some of this programming so that we can ultimately incorporate a wider variety of projects in the mix. The overall goals of the project are to increase student engagement and enhance communication skills through arts-based projects in the curriculum. So librarians, artists, archivists, educators, and community members are working together in project design. It's really sort of an effort to bring a meeting of the minds to work collectively in that process. And we've really found that helps with student engagement and enhancing communication skills. The benefits of these types of programs are, we found it's a very holistic and collective learning experience in general, but it builds new neural pathways by approaching topics in a new way and fostering critical thinking. It's very much helps hone in student communication skills. One thing that I observed when working on some of these projects was that students who might have been more traditionally quiet in the class or had difficulty expressing themselves through traditional ways really came out of their shell when artistic projects or artistic framework was implemented in the class. And this is all sort of centered around inquiry-based learning, which ultimately sort of rejects the idea that there's just one answer or one correct approach to solving a problem. This form of learning really focuses on the learning journey as opposed to the destination. And really libraries being by nature interdisciplinary, I feel are very ideally positioned for these types of programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the projects and initiatives that happened in the program. So how is it structured? Currently, the way we have it structured is students or faculty can apply and craft a proposal, and we have sort of a website that folks can find out more information and apply on. And we look, when evaluating the proposals, we look for key elements, and there's usually like a little committee that reviews the proposals, but ultimately it comes down to innovation in pedagogy or project concept, clarity of the project goals. Are they really outlining exactly like how this is going to happen and what the timeline is? And the feasibility. Sometimes people have grand ideas, but they're not really feasible within a particular time frame or within the constraints of the program. And is it an inspiration project? Is it something that's actually going to inspire others or prompt other similar projects? We also look for creative use of library resources or programming. How are they integrating library resources into this particular project? And in this picture, you probably see this is the student mural group. And there is now a mural that sits on the third floor of the library. And this particular piece was called the Golden Sequence. And it was inspired by the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. And the students were really happy about that. That was sort of a more recent one, and it's now on so if you're up on the third floor of the library, you'll see that. And it really, they had quite a sense of pride of working through that. But it was a semester-long project for them where they worked on that mural in collaboration with a local artist and the library to get that done. So next, I thought I'd just spotlight a few classes that participated in the program over the years, and I'll discuss the projects the students worked on and the synthesis of artistic practices and library resources into the class topics. So in this class, this was one of our very early ones, and in this course, students were researching the history of the labor movement, and they were creating their own versions of posters of the era under guidance from a local artist while using relief printing techniques. And they also created digital versions of these posters in which they created research papers along with them using the library resources. But we had a sort of a small exhibit afterwards. The study was kind of focused on 19th century print culture, and the students really enjoyed creating this, and many of them wanted to learn about relief printing beyond the scope of the class afterwards. So it was a huge success and sort of set the tone. It was one of the first ones, and it sort of set the tone for some of our later classes. In this next class, this was another relief printing one, and this one was where the students were creating linoleum cut posters inspired by World War II era public health campaigns. And they created an accompanying video as well that acted as an artist statement. You'll hear me talk a lot about artist statements in this. We always make sure that that is a part of the project so that the students are really reflecting on their learning process and their creative process. And as most artists know, like an artist statement is really key to the process. So we did have them create those in many cases. But this was really interesting because at the start of the semester, there was a measles outbreak in California, and it was linked to unvaccinated individuals at Disneyland. And so as a result, we ended up getting a lot of artwork that had sort of Disney themes incorporated, which was kind of nice too, because it really tapped into current affairs as well, which I thought was really critical to it as well. This one was a mechanical behaviors of materials class, and students worked in groups to understand how part of an animal skeleton could support its own weight or possibly fail. And they basically were creating sculptures that we eventually had an exhibit on. And the work was kind of inspired by Theo Janssen's strand base. He that was sort of the inspiration for those particular sculptures, and it ended up working out really well. And we had a nice exhibit over in Clough afterwards. But I really do feel like it expands the students' understanding of art and how, you know, science and art come together. In this next one, students worked with artists to learn various bookmaking and book binding techniques. And they took information that they researched through the library on symbolism and literature, and they created hand-bound books sort of centered on the course topic. We also had an exhibit for this one as well, and the books really turned out really, really well. They also created a video artist statement along with it, which chronicles their learning journey. And we really feel like those video documentaries or audio documentaries are really a key component of it, encouraging the metacognition. So this next one was media archaeology and optical toys. It was a class on media archaeology, and after studying sort of the history of these kind of devices in class, and we have a lot of stereoscopes and optical toys from that era in the Georgia Tech Library archives, students made their own optical toys. So they were creating things like stereoscopic cards and zoetropes, just to name a few. And they submitted a photo essay documenting kind of the progress of their project's construction. But yeah, the project allowed them to explore not only the physical construction and history of these 19th century toys, but also the science behind them, which was, you know, optics and physics and electricity. And this picture here is an example of one of the stereoscopic cards that was created. The students are using their card, which you can see the tech tower in the background. They made a stereoscopic card of some places on campus, and then we're able to actually use those with the stereoscopes, which was a lot of fun for them. This next project was a partnership with our friends at the Paper Museum, who we work with very closely and have worked with for many, many years. Love the folks over there. They are such great collaborators. And this was the study of information design. And basically, those enrolled were provided with resources on the evolution of typography from the library ahead of time. But, you know, these types of concepts about typography and its history, you know, usually they're just kind of only able to visualize those types of concepts in their mind or in theory. But through this project, students were able to learn from artists who were able to show them the actual physical roots of digital typesetting. And so they collaborated with local artists and fellow students on setting type, doing letterpress and the printing process, and sort of understanding those origins in a physical sense. So this was really interesting for them. They ended up printing out some letterpress, and that picture is from the class doing the letterpress. So this was kind of came from inspiration. I don't know if folks in the room are familiar with Brian Detmer, but he is an artist who does sort of alteration art. And students were kind of inspired by this sculptor. Students were sort of challenged in their English 1101 classes to recreate their own artist book from books and resources that had been weeded from the library's collection. So we're not just tearing up books in the picture just for the fun of it. These were actually books that were at some point weeded from the collection and were no longer needed, and which is a normal process for libraries. And in this case, we took a few of those for the classes, to create these exhibits from these items that were weeded. And Brian Detmer, he's noted for his alteration of pre-existing media. So he'll take like old books and maps and record albums and cassette tapes and things like that. And here's a picture of some of his work and create new art out of that. So some of his work was the inspiration. And we actually had an Atlanta artist working with us who had worked under Brian for a time as a mentee and was providing guidance. So that was kind of sort of a nice linkage there. So in this literature class, and this is, I think, the last one before we get into artist in residence, but in this literature class, this was focused on H. Rider Haggard, and that was sort of the central focus of the class. Students kind of created their own collaged illustrations. So these collaged illustrations they were creating were to reimagine, reinterpret, and remix Haggard's text in new ways. And students learned techniques for media editing, paper circuits, and paper collages. They were kind of focused on that. And they used the paper collage to create designs that, following the course's emphasis on digital technology, also incorporated paper circuits, switches, and LED lights. But making these illustrations tactually interactive and illuminated, it really enhanced the audience experience with the collages. And throughout the course, we had artists mentoring students in the art of collage. And with the library, students also created a set of descriptive tags for their illustration. So this was kind of an interesting spin. Through this activity, they learned from librarians and instructors about metadata standards. And, that's not something that's, traditionally most folks know about, but they learned about metadata standards and conventions from the Library of Congress and the Visual Resources Association, which helped them in exploring how these standards are used for organization and discovery. So, so that was kind of an interesting component. They had to essentially catalog their own artwork for this particular project. All right. So that's just kind of a sampling of, excuse me, some of the projects that were part of the SMART program and have acted as inspiration for future projects. And we're hoping to continue that going and to continue to integrate art into the curriculum and be a partner in that with campus collaborators. Building off of that, the library in the last few years has started an artist in residence program where we have a new artist each year who works with the library. They will run workshops. They will create art that is displayed in the library or around campus. And our first one was Deanna Serling. She was the first artist in residence, and she began her residency with a collaborative workshop called Mapping the Text, and that was inspired by quotes from Frank Herbert's novel Dune. The workshop basically acted as a response to, and it was an appreciation of the 50 years of science fiction at Georgia Tech, which was a collaboration at the time between the library and the literature, media, and communication program. But she tends to work in collage a lot. And the workshop allowed participants to sort of make and take their own collages. And once they were finished with the collages, all of the collages were collectively photographed and manipulated for a larger scale collage. And she kind of gave the students a lot of the history of collage and the history of art. So she was able to share her insight there. And if you have not been, some folks have probably been over there and seen this, but This is Watermark, which is her piece, which was created and lives in the sort of the atrium of the library. And I do have, let's see, a time-lapse video of that, which I'm hoping I can show. See, I'll pull it over here. And I think it should. Hopefully you can let me know if you can't see this, but I think it's kind of nice. She's got this on her website, and I really love the time-lapse effect of that. It's so beautiful. And on these sunny days, it really catches a lot of attention, but very purposeful in terms of how she did the design, and it was nice as our kickoff or our signature project over there for the artist in residence. All right. So I see I've got about 15 minutes left, and so in these remaining 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about virtual museums and archives, which I am seeing as the next sort of trend in academic libraries. I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on emerging technologies and interactive and immersive technologies, and giving students and users different ways to interact with library resources. And that has been sort of my focus for the last 3 or 4 years. I created a VIP project, and I'll talk a little bit about that, especially for folks who maybe are not familiar with the VIP program. But it's called Empathy Bites, and it has really, really grown over the years. It started with just a few students, and now I have, I think, 25 students, and I'm potentially looking for more. But before I launch into how the VIP project is set up, I thought I would just sort of talk about what VIP is. And this is the program that essentially is provided the framework for me to do this. The VIP Consortium is a program that exists around the country and the world, and many universities participate. And essentially, it gives students a way of getting course credit for working on long-term research projects with Georgia Tech faculty on multidisciplinary initiatives. And I just really feel like libraries are ideally positioned for this type of thing, being so interdisciplinary and working with so many different subject areas. But it's a form of a CURE or course-based undergraduate research experience. And it is a two-way learning experience. I find I'm learning from the students are learning from me. It's really very beneficial to everybody all around. It provides the students with a way to communicate research to stakeholders and practice communicating their research to a broad audience. And it's very normal for these projects to last multiple years, so it is iterative. The work that was started many years ago is still continuing now. It doesn't end when the semester ends, it sort of continues on. So knowledge transfer is a really big component of this, taking, the information and the work that we've done one semester and transferring it over to another. So that's something we really focus on heavily, is that documentation. So if you go to the Georgia Tech Georgia Tech's VIP site, there's lots of teams. Faculty from all areas can create teams, and they have a ton on that website. It's really definitely worth perusing and seeing all the different teams they have. But our focus is essentially broken down into the sort of the thesis of our project is looking at how multimedia and emerging technologies can enhance empathy and understanding as we create digital scholarship. We're also sort of looking at how technology can enhance empathy as well as improve access to resources. And it's broken down into sub-teams is how I have it set up. I mentioned it started with a few students, but now I have quite a few. I think I have somewhere between 25 and 30. And I have it broken down into sub-teams with everybody working on or the sub-teams working on a specialized area. And lately, we've been working on how AR and VR can improve access to resources, specifically special collections and archives. And we are in the process of building out an immersive library archive. So the three sort of main questions that, we're asking ourselves are, how is technology helping us better understand this community or this collection? What technologies can we explore or experiment with? And how can we best communicate our research to others? If I tell my students that if you take anything from this class, the important thing is, it's one thing to be able to do the research, but it's another thing to be able to communicate it to a broad audience. And I really have them focus heavily on being able to distill the ideas that they're working into into a way that really a large spectrum of people can understand. And that's a heavy emphasis in our VIP class. So I mentioned that the teams or the VIP class is broken up into sub-teams. And it tends to vary depending on the makeup of the class. I have different students cycling in and some leaving. And so that it can vary depending on what types of students are in the class. But senior members of the team are given the opportunity to mentor junior members of the team and get them oriented and onboard them. But we have 4 teams at the moment. We have the app team, the emerging tech team, the media team, and the web team. And the students sort of break out into to those groups. And I'll just quickly go here. This is kind of a breakdown on the types of technologies each team is using and what they're doing. The app team is basically working on an app that accompanies our immersive environment. And we started with Swift and Xcode, but because that's iOS only, we ended up switching over to React Native so that they could develop for Android as well. One thing about the app team is they've really run with Figma, which is a user interface sort of design tool, and they've been using that for a lot of their ideation activities. The emerging tech team is sort of the ones working heavily with Unity, Blender, and photogrammetry to develop and 3D and create the 3D models from our library archives for the virtual museum. So they're kind of focused on that. The web team is creating our website, which showcases a lot of our research and helps communicate it out to other folks. We started with WordPress, but found that very limiting and have moved on to Drupal now at this point. And the media team are sort of the journalists and media creators for the team. Hopefully I'll have time to show you, but we have some behind the scenes footage. So we are always documenting that process from start to finish in multiple modes. So it's not just writing things down or typing stuff up. It's also, doing these behind the scenes videos and things like that. So I always try to connect our work in the VIP with current research around the world. I want the students to be looking outside the Georgia Tech bubble and being aware of what is going on around the world. And so whenever I get an opportunity, I always share with them how they can find out about how this technology is being used elsewhere. So some of the projects that we've used for inspiration have been things like Backup Ukraine, which is using technology, allowing citizens to upload scans of monuments and art and religious sites to a digital library of cultural landmarks. And that's one thing that we've been able to I've been able to share with the students. But one of the projects that sort of really was big inspiration for me and essentially kind of jump-started my thinking about doing something similar at Georgia Tech was the University of Southern California is doing something similar with illuminated manuscripts. They are creating essentially ways to interact with the illuminated manuscripts from their collection through virtual reality. And that was really fascinating to me, just sort of exploring how they were doing that and exploring sort of the juxtaposition of real objects versus the virtual creations and the questions that poses. I'll try to wrap it up so we have some time for questions here. So I'll sort of kind of go through these kind of quickly. There were these were sort of other inspirational projects that I showed the students that had to do with providing people with immersive experiences. Like Tubala is essentially recreating itself in the metaverse because of climate change and things like that. I think, it's important for them to know about these other projects that are using these technologies. So very quickly, getting into our virtual archive, you can probably see from here, these are some of our virtual scans of pieces from our archival collection. This is a band uniform, an old tech sweater. These are the types of things that would essentially disintegrate with people. If they're interacting and touching these things by nature, over time, they're going to disintegrate. But if we create sort of a duplicate in an immersive environment, that gives users an alternate path to experience some of these pieces. The way these pieces were created was through photogrammetry, and I will talk a little bit about that in a second. That's our app, which kind of accompanies it and talks about the artifacts that we've been scanning. For instance, we have an Olympic torch that in our collection, and that was one of the things that the students scanned and created was an Olympic torch. They even put flames on it so that people could have flames to go with it. But these are the technologies they're using to create that. And I sort of talked about this a little bit earlier, the website. I'll just show you this very quickly. This is a demo of our website. This is sort of what it looks like and how we organize it in order to showcase the work. This is very short. It's just about a minute long. And I will try to wrap this up quickly so we have time for questions.
Do you have examples of the virtual reality?
Yes.
Can you show us? We have time. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
you can do another 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So we have some of these 3D scans on the website. So this is actually where people can interact with some of these artifacts that we've scanned. That's just the website. But I'm going to show you the, let's see if we can get to go to the video. We'll come back to that in a minute. And as I'm showing you the video, I will talk a little bit about photogrammetry and how that works. Essentially, it is just a series of photographs that are taken and then stitched together in Blender. We went over to the body scan lab and I was having them learn a little bit about what they're doing in the architecture in the body scan lab. And some of my students actually had themselves scanned by the research assistant over there, which was great. That's another part of this class. I like to take them around campus to different areas and make sure that they are learning about what other research centers are doing and the technologies they're using. So here's the video of the virtual archive. And I will say that the scans have improved vastly since what's in this video. This was from spring of last year. And hopefully you're able to see that all right.
Can you make it bigger?
Oh, bigger? Yeah. I'll see. Let me see if I can get it. Hopefully you can see this. Let's see. I'll go back a little bit. There we go. See, and we've improved the texturing on a lot of these, so they're actually a lot better than what is seen in this video here. We've been adding little cards in, so when people interact with the pieces, they will get information about the artifacts. These are Buzz's sneakers. All right, let me see. I'll close that out. Whoops. Oh. Okay, let me get that out. So, yeah, so that's just a quick, like, brief demo of the archive, and it's really improved since then too. We've you know, they've worked a lot on the texturing, and the way it's done is these are the technologies on how it was created. They basically used Luma AI. They did photogrammetry, which was just getting high quality photographs and then stitching them together in Blender, and then using Unity to pull all that together. These are sort of a quick picture of some of the artifacts we have living in there, but there's so much more that we are hoping to create. For instance, we want to create like rooms with particular particular focuses, like the collection from the first woman who matriculated at Georgia Tech, and other collections sort of along a theme. And here's some more of our artifacts, but they've really they've turned out quite well. And we're sort of experimenting with different environments. Here's another environment that we're kind of playing around with as a place to experience and interact with these artifacts. And this technology is just moving so rapidly that I think this is definitely a direction that things are going to go. I just showed this one. This was the hands. You may have noticed in the original video, the hands were just sort of blocks. Now we have been able to develop it where there's like normal hand tracking in it, and that is much easier for people to utilize. But I've had a lot of folks working with me on this. It takes a village. These are a lot of the past students and present students who have been working with me on this, and I'm so pleased with their work. But anyway, I will sort of wrap here, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about these different projects, and hopefully this has reframed your idea of what libraries are working on or doing. And yeah, I'd love to take any questions or just hear what you have to say about